tall, gangly thing?
Hello and welcome to High Roll Radio episode number 4. This is a live Teamfight Tactics call-in show where you, the viewer, are just as much a part of the show as we are. My name is Nick DiPasquale, also known as Gangly, and this is actually take 2 of the show starting if you're watching on podcast. For everyone in Twitch right now, thanks for hanging in there. Today, I'm joined by 2 very special guests, hot off the blazing trails of North America's victory at the Mortdog Madness Neon Nights edition in Aesah and Mismatched Socks. Aesah, let's start with you. How are you feeling?
Okay, North America got a victory, but I got rolled. I had like one of the lowest placements. I did VOD review my games, and I don't really think it was my fault. I low rolled pretty hard, but it's fine. But yeah, I'm glad PP God won. Precedent, best perform is a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm doing good.
Good. Yeah, and Socks as well, one of the victors of the tournament. How are you feeling, Socks?
Yeah, I mean, it feels good to be on a team with Precedent, right? I mean, that's you don't even need to say that. But I'm doing well. I guess since you guys already heard about the TFT victory, I'll just talk about something TFT unrelated, maybe. Like I had to start going to work recently, like in person going to work, and I have to actually start doing like, a full days of work, like 6 hours. So that's been pretty unpleasant. But yeah.
Well, if nothing else, you have a chance now to just kind of sit back, relax, and flame some callers. I actually meant to tell you guys this beforehand, and I didn't, so now I just have to say it on the air, that feel free to say whatever you want to the callers tonight. This is a no-holds-bar call-in show, so if you want to tell someone that their call is dumb, feel free to let them know. If you want to tell someone that their call is really great, also feel free to do that as well. But let me explain how the format of this show works. If you're in Twitch chat right now, if you're watching this podcast live on Twitch, you can go ahead and use the command !Discord. That will get you into my Discord server. Once you're there, you'll see on the left-hand side the High Roll Radio category. Under that, there's a channel called Submit Takes. Go ahead and post your opinions, your hot takes, or questions that you have for Aesah or Mismatched Socks. We could talk about a large range of things. I mean, Mortdog Madness is probably the biggest one that just happened. We can talk about the entirety of the Set 6 and 6.5 competitive season as we're kind of wrapping that up. I mean, it's done now. We're basically in Set 7 waiting room. There's not too much we can really talk about Set 7 yet. If you guys have any takes, feel free to throw them in there. I'm not sure if we'll take them. But once you're there, submit your take, and then go into the waiting room and mute yourself. Don't deafen. But if we like your take, we'll bring you in for a quick mic check before we put you onto the show. With all that said, the 3 of us, we're just going to sit here and talk a little bit. I mean, obviously, we said it before, Mortdog Madness is the biggest thing that just kind of happened. PP God practicing for the wrong Riot game and still winning the tournament. I wanted to talk about this, though. I don't know, Aesah, did you watch the stream for day 2?
I watched it with Frodan. Yeah, I watched every game, I think, except the first one because I was sleeping during the first one.
Did you watch the main broadcast, or did you watch like their POV with comms?
I watched Frodan's co-stream. There was no comms, but Frodan was controlling the camera, and he had all 10 players' streams open simultaneously, and he would just like flip between them.
Well, one of the things that I thought was really cool, and I think it is kind of the product of the 4v4 format, was that Socks was really vocal in the tournament. I messaged Socks and Aesah earlier talking about this, that I actually would attribute a lot of the success of the team to both Socks and Goobums, who were incredibly vocal, not only making calls about like how to make people's boards stronger, but also like on a macro level of like talking about when to all in, or like how to target certain players. I don't know, like Socks, did you kind of want to talk about that, like how 4v4 stacks up to like the standard free-for-all format?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie. I was watching some of the like EU players and NA players VODs for like the 4v4 tournament, and they were just playing their own game. And I'm pretty sure that's why like our team was by far, like by so much farther, the best 4v4 tournament, 4v4 team. Like it doesn't matter whether Soju or Pressman play the game. Like 4v4 is fundamentally like a game about like it's like a macro game, way more than important than like how good individuals are. So like you don't even look at like the scores. Like at the very end they had the scores up, and it's like what the scores: Pressman, Soju, me, and Goobums. That shit is turbo fake. Like one of my hot takes is that like For example, I pretty much never scouted any of my teammates at all. And if I saw that the enemies had no blitzcrank, I would just corner my carries. And then in two different like scenarios, my literal 3-item carry got hooked by my teammate's blitzcrank, and I'm like, bruh. But that doesn't matter because like it doesn't really matter if your carry gets hooked by your own team because it's not that big of a deal, right? So because you're like the HP swing if your teammate wins versus you, if you win is not that big of a deal. So I wanted to actually talk about this because before we were on the show, I wanted to say that I think like 4v4 should be the format going forward. As someone who's played in multiple formats right now, like I think 4v4 has the most potential to be like to make TFT a watchable esport.
Interesting. Okay, Aesah, you obviously were a part of this tournament as well. Before I kind of give any thoughts I have, I think people are more interested to hear from you. Like, well, one, kind of general thoughts on 4v4, and then if you also want to respond to Socks about 4v4 being like the primary format.
So I think from a competitive standpoint, I agree with Socks that 4v4 is actually the most fun because if you're playing your own game, let's say it's like stage 4, and you know like your opponent's going for Draven, like one of your 7 opponents, it's not really worth it to hold 2 Dravens holding 8 gold on your bench that you could be using on your own board. But like when it comes 4v4, like that whole aspect of the game really becomes unlocked and it's really fun. I really enjoyed that. So I think for competitive, 4v4 makes a lot of sense. Like Socks, I think in the pre-show mentioned supporting it over double up, but I think the thing is for casual play, it's hard to get like 4 players. So then like double up, it's easy to find like one person, just like play that. But yeah, I think 4 was a lot of fun, but it's I think it might be difficult for like Riot to like support, I guess.
Do you think it would be worth supporting competitively if we had to do it within the format we have right now of like having to queue into a solos game and you have the ability to compete against your own teammates? Or do you think like it's only worth pursuing competitively if we have a dedicated 4v4 mode?
Wait, I want to
I think
interject
okay.
also.
I think a dedicated 4v4 mode would be better, but
yeah, sure.
I want to interject. We can continue discussing, but here there's actually 2 different takes. At least in a macro sense. So if you can't queue into your teammates, you can only queue into the enemies. Then the matchmaking gets pretty predictable, assuming that they keep similar matchmaking. But half of the fun of 4v4 on a macro level is the fact that a lot of times in 4v4, let's just say your next to your opponents is 2 EU players and 1 NA player. Technically, it would be awful to like level, like it's a terrible spot. But sometimes you just level and roll it down anyways because you have such a high chance of finding EU player, and then that life swing is so massive that like sometimes you just make like bad plays because you're queuing 2 EU players. And if it's 3 EU players, like you always just level and roll it down because your next 3 5-stars are just going to be EU. So then you just like rail them. So like you're losing a lot of macro sense in the fact that if you make it like dedicated something like that. But obviously they need like a dedicated 4v4. But like it can't just be like you can only fight enemies, right? Because otherwise I don't know. At least that's part of the fun for me. For the 4v4 tournament, there was so many like different like leveling decisions you can make.
Yeah,
I agree. I think you need to be able to fight teammates. I got confused when you asked your question about queuing. I thought you meant like outside in the client queuing up.
Oh, I understand. No. Well, so one thing I think that's actually really cool to kind of support Sox's point, I remember a specific moment in, I want to say it was one of the later games of day 2, where Sox had taken Future Sight. I don't remember which game it was, but Sox had taken Future Sight, which allowed him to not only know who he was playing, but also sometimes decipher who someone else in his team was playing, because if he was then in their pool of players that they could play, but he knew who he was playing next, you could kind of tell if your pool was actually only full of European players. And then we also saw a different moment where I remember Sox made the call that I want to say it was Goobums or Crespin. Right? Yeah. It was someone play for first. And the rest of us level to 8, roll it down every turn just to deal damage to the European players. Let Goobum sweep them at the end, and it's actually it's cool that like it adds this extra level of just like knowledge is power, and the way you communicate with your team, you can kind of problem solve together to figure out how to like actually get to the end.
Okay, wait. That's like fairly big brain, but the even more big brain shit is so I play a lot of 2v2 with Goobums. And one of the things is that we have a lot of cycles, and Goobums is always scouting for exactly what the what item component people needs on carousel. Like that's his like role in when we play 2v2, and he did that in 4v4, and we griefed like every single important component. There was a chance where the EU player would have instantly got first if he got blue buff brand, but we denied it from him, and like that guy literally lost the streak like 2 rounds later. So like 4v4 is about having like a lot of free cycles to help your opponents. Like P-God and Press Event P-God and Soju mostly played their own game. But having Goobums is one like my 2v2 teammate. Like having Goobums as a 2v2 teammate or like just a teammate in general is just next level.
Aesah, you were Team Binoculars, right? So it was you, Goose, Solus, and Ramcat?
Yeah.
What was the dynamic like? I mean, do you feel like you also had kind of moments of like the team-oriented discussion?
Definitely. I don't think we like Sox. I feel like it sounds like they had like 2 like IGLs. When I think like in like Valorant, it's like a lot of times they have like an in-game leader, and he might not be getting the most kills. I think for us, we definitely like talk about those things. Like, okay, I have like 3 people like play for top 4, 1 person play for first, griefing our opponent's items, like sacking board if you're gonna play your teammates. Like we definitely did all that, and I think it was a lot of fun. I kind of wish we scrimmed beforehand so we could like practice that, but it was a lot of fun like figuring it out in the middle of the tournament as well. Sorry, what was the question? But yeah,
just kind of talking about like
it's a great time.
Yeah, no, just like because we're talking about like the added level of like discussion that comes from like being in 4v4, like having the strategies like griefing items or when to level and all in, that like maybe you have actually just like a different cadence in the game compared to like where you would be normally. I guess, I mean, it kind of sounds like you answered it anyway. Sorry, I also was a little distracted because I'm kind of reading takes on the side. But I'm gonna pivot this conversation because I feel like we've talked on 4v4 a little bit, and I want to talk about kind of set 6, 6.5 as a whole before we get some takes in. But obviously, competitive season is over. Both Sox and Aesah, you were both 2 very visible competitors in both sets. Aesah doing very well in set 6, kind of not finding that same success in 6.5. And also Sox felt like everyone kept talking about how good you are throughout different points in the sets. Like I remember going into Piltover Cup, I think you were rank 1. Going into, I think it was like Zon Cup or Innovation Cup, another one, everyone's talking about how good you were compared to the rest of the ladder. And it felt like either it just like didn't quite pan out in terms of like the variance you saw in tournament or whatever it was. I mean, I would love to kind of get your thoughts on like how the competitive season went for the 2 of you this set. Aesah, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think. Okay, so as was always, like I always, no matter what happens, I think everyone, myself, I could have played better, of course. So like I don't just want this to sound like an excuse, but I say this a lot. I think a lot of people do not understand how much variance is in a TFT tournament, because the win rate for a single game is very similar to a win rate to a single table poker tournament, a sit and go. They have very, very similar win rates, and it is extremely common for like anyone who plays a lot of poker to go through 100 or 200 game losing streaks. Like that's not like 200 in a row, but over 200 games, even if you're like the best player, like let's say 70% top 4 rate, 25% top 1 rate, to go through like a 100 game streak where like you lost more than you won. So obviously like in a 6 game sample size, like I didn't make day 2 on regionals, and like I was pretty bummed out about that. But yeah, I just like, I could have played better for sure, but yeah, it's just like I think a lot of people just do not realize how much variance goes into that. So yeah.
Now, when you're talking about like the amount of variance compared to their ladder rankings, because like statistically speaking, that doesn't quite add up. But also, you're saying it's because the field of play is more competitive. Is that why?
No, I'm saying hypothetically, if you're in regionals and your win rate in every game is 70% top 4 and 25% top 1, which I think is pretty generous in such a tough field as regional. I think that's pretty generous to any given player. But if that is your win rate, I think there's a lot of there's like a very high chance you don't make the next day. And I think like a lot of like after the fact narratives, like going into the tournament, a lot of people consider Nubao to be like the overwhelming favorite, and then he got day one, and then like literally no one talked about him after that at all. So like obviously like the last Don't Talk If You Don't Know, obviously Goobum's like amazing player. Like we can watch his VODs and see that. But that could have been like almost like a lot of different people as well.
No, but I think it depends, right? Like I get Ace's point. Ace's point is saying that even if you have like even if you're like have a huge even if you're a huge favorite going to the tournament, you can still get day one. But I mean, I think I think one point is that like when me and Goobums reviewed Nubal's VODs later, and Nubal missed it by 1 point, and we have identified like 10 or 15 spots that he could have made up 1 point. Now 1 point is obviously not a very large number of points, and like it's just unlucky that he missed it by 1 point. But I feel like 1 point is probably like skill oriented. Probably like it's not that much of a stretch to get 1 point, and it was like there was very very clear spots he could have gone 1 point.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this after Last Chance Qualifier. That's what it was. After Last Chance Qualifier, where Ramblin had that horrible, completely miserable low roll where he just can't find Battles of Heart 2, ends up missing in the tiebreaker. Everyone on the show kind of agreed the same thing Sox is saying, that like if you lose by 1 point, it's very rare that you could not have found that 1 point by playing better. Which the thing I would say in Aesah's favor, though, is not everybody needs to play at the same level to receive the same amount of points. And that's the frustrating part of TFT, that I could play significantly worse than the two of you in any given game, and I could still place higher than you. But the thing that's encouraging for me, at least in like the competitive atmosphere or landscape, is that we're still at a point in TFT where anybody who doesn't advance to the next stage, for the most part, could have advanced if they played better. And until we reach that point where it's like, I played perfectly, I could not have done any better, and I still got day one, to me, it's like, there's still a lot of life left in this game that there's still a lot of room to improve and a lot of stuff left to explore.
Sorry, I'm just reading the chat because it's super interesting. It looks like the Esports Law and Aesah are having a discussion in Twitch chat about. No, but the thing is that like Aesah's right in the terms of like a lot of times, like RNG can get us make it such that you can't get top four. There's no way. But the thing is that with better play, a lot of these like because poker is like a win or lose scenario, it's like a black and white thing. A lot of times it is like more or less like if you lose, you lose. But like TFT, you can actually get those placements like by playing differently and making different decisions. I understand the poker analogy a little bit, but like when we watched Nubal's VODs, it wasn't like, oh, these mistakes are really hard to identify. They're really obvious mistakes. They're like, oh, this is like egregious, like, Right.
I know.
Like he made.
I know, like even the Ramblin' example I talked about, like one of the spots where I noticed he could have gained 1 point was he basically did a transition and didn't leave enough time to scout while having future sight. And he could have gained a placement just by using his augment. And that's a very basic fundamental thing. Obviously, it's a lot harder when you're doing a big transition, but those are things you can improve on. And even like that's something I know, Sox, you talked about in Doa's Galaxy Brain, like way back in set 4, about like one of the fundamental things that a lot of people get wrong in TFT is like not allowing yourself time to think, like not allowing yourself to like really look at other people's boards and make decisions. That's like a fundamental part of TFT that in that one moment Ramblin' didn't have. Not that he's not one of the best players in North America, but like that's a simple problem that he could have fixed and gotten one more point.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of just don't agree with Aesah's take in the fact that it is RNG because I feel like there's so much in your control that like, yes, you probably should be represented. Nubal probably should have gone to Worlds, but like him not going to Worlds, he can still control most of it. Like it's still within his realm of control. Like it's not completely up to RNG that he doesn't make it to Worlds. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, like I agree with that, but I feel like you guys are a little misunderstanding what I'm saying about variance. I'm not talking about like you can make a different decision or anything. I'm talking about like assuming your win rate, like top 4 rate is 70% and your top 1 rate is 25%. Just using those numbers, it doesn't matter what decisions you make. It doesn't matter how you
Sure.
get there. I'm saying
see.
that even if you are like that, which is probably if you have those numbers, you're probably the best player in the field. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys, and also part of the reason I'm really hard on myself, like when I lose games, is because I believe if like Google developed like the equivalent of AlphaZero for TFT, I believe if that was a thing, I think it would top 4 close to 100% against the 7 best players in the world right now. So that's why like I think like that's possible because there's so many decisions you make in TFT, you can always make them better. I got day 1 on in regionals. I feel like my play obviously could have been better. If I played better, I think I could have made day 2, but there still is a lot of variance. Well, not I could have. I definitely would have made day 2 if I played better. But I'm just saying like if you're the best player in the tournament, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like if you're the current world's best player, you can still very easily get day 1. Just
Yeah, no, of course. That's I think everyone agrees with that.
But yeah, I believe like if you play TFT perfectly, you could probably top 4 close to 100% against like the 7 best players in the world right now, just because there's so many decisions you make.
Yeah. And then maybe I can take this opportunity to talk about my set 6. Yeah. I mean, set 6 is a meme set. I didn't put too much effort into most of the prep for the tournaments or like most of the set. Just a few tournaments that like really I needed to qualify for Worlds. Qualify for regionals, like practice a lot, and I think for the most part the results showed. Me and Gibbons practiced a lot for what is it called, Zom Cup, and we went 1-2, and we went 1-2 by like a wide margin too. So yeah, and then for set 6.5, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty much guaranteed to qualify. Like the things that when I prep for NA regionals and when I prep for comps, this time I didn't have too much time, so instead of getting better than everyone else, which just takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort, I just cheated and I like found a comp that is so broken that like I knew that if I played silver every game, I had like a 100% top 4 rate and 100% like a 50% win rate for most of my games if I was the only person playing silver. And for like 2 weeks before the regionals, I was the only person playing silver, and then I leaked it, and then I think 4 people played silver in the final lobby, and then I still didn't make it to Worlds. But even despite that, I'm pretty sure my odds of qualifying for NA regionals was like still overwhelmingly high. I played like comps that I've never played, and I still like played it better than most people. I think I played 2 Twitch rerolls, 1 twin shot reroll. If I just practiced those comps maybe once or twice, I think I would have made it. But like the thing is that like some of these tournaments results are kind of fake because partially what Aesah said, but also partially because for me, half those comps I never played, and I'm pretty sure I literally top 4 or I actually did decently well in the NA regionals, pretty much from just pure fundamentals. So my ego's kind of big. I'm pretty sure I am top 5 player.
Also want to talk about my set 6 as well. If
yeah, go for it, and then we'll get into some callers right after.
I just want to say, so I talked about like on 6.5, like again, like I said, I could have played better, so I don't want to just use that excuse, but I talked about like the negative side of Variance, but also the positive side of Variance. Like I kind of got my name out there winning Challenger Series, and like I think I was actually one of the weakest players to make in the final lobby. But yeah, and I also started streaming after that. Shout out to Jirachi for like encouraging me to do that. I'm trying to stream full time now, but I started streaming after, and that actually took away like so much of my like potential to improve during 6.5. It was taking so much of my attention. Like even when I got done playing TFT, instead of thinking it's like, oh, how can I be better at TFT, I would think about like, oh, how can I get like more stream engagement and stuff. So it was like I have like so much respect for people who are like streaming TFT and like staying at the top of the ladder. It's like I never realized I had a big advantage because like what Sox says about leaking tech, like going to Challenger Series, I knew like a lot of like positioning stuff and just like certain units that are really strong that like other people didn't know because I didn't stream and they did. So I learned stuff from them, but they didn't learn stuff from me. So yeah.
All right, very nice. Well, yeah, I think it's a nice little recap for both of your, kind of set 6.5 careers. And with that, we can move right into some callers. All right. We've got our first caller of the night, Bryce Blum, Esports Law is here. Bryce, where are you calling from?
Who invited this guy? What the heck?
What's up, Bryce?
This guy. I'm calling from Seattle.
Very nice.
The greatest city in the country.
What do you want to talk about tonight?
So I wanted to quickly weigh in on this variance discussion because I think it's a super interesting discussion that doesn't come up enough in TFT, and I think Aesah, because of his poker background, is one of the kind of big proponents of talking about variance in TFT. And I think in general, I really agree with Aesah's takes on variance, but I do think that there's a little bit of nuance in the way in which I think about TFT variance versus poker variance, because there's so much more control in TFT, and that control comes from skill, but it also comes from knowledge, right? Like Sox gave a great example of, if he doesn't leak the Sivir tech, I think we can say that absent the tech getting leaked some other way, which is relatively unlikely under the circumstances, Sox qualifies for Worlds like, I don't know how often, Sox, you think like 95 times out of 100?
I think
or
at
something?
least 90. Like I legitimately think that.
Wow. I think that
no,
too.
No, the thing is that if you watch EU and like they didn't leak the tech for some reason, like the NA, like EU players don't watch NA or something like that, but like nobody played Sivir NA, and then literally every single if you look at the shops, it's like 3 Sivers per shop. Nobody bought it, so like I'm very, very certain.
Yeah,
it's like a 90 to 95%.
But I'm saying like it's just a math problem. So it's like, let's say you don't leak the tech. What do you think your top 4 rate per game and top 1 rate per game is?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, but I'm saying like even if your top 4 rate per game is like 90%, you're not gonna make Worlds 90% if you make regionals. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter how you get there. I agree with Bryce. It's like you're making 1,000+ decisions every TFT game, so you can control, like you have a lot more like ability to improve. But like what I'm saying is that actually doesn't matter. You can just look at the math in the context of, hey, what's your top 4 rate? What's your top 1 rate? And then we can go from there. Like how you get there, it doesn't matter is what I'm saying.
I'm think that kind of confused. Like if someone does have, like I wish I understood how the math worked. I would defer to Aesah. Like I trust that Aesah has a better understanding of how this math plays out than I do. But like in my head, if someone has like a 90% top 4 rate, how do they not make like? Doesn't that mean that
there's only 4 out of 32, right?
Yeah, and it wouldn't just be top 4 rate. It would have to be average placement, right?
Sure. Yeah, you could do average placement. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because like if not all bot 4s are created the same. So I think part of my take on this is that it's not just about like Sox's capability to win Worlds. It's that like, okay, if he doesn't leak the tech, Sox has a 100% chance of qualifying for day 2. And I think that Goobum's edge on the field, it wasn't a specific comp or tech, but Goobum's was he was, first of all, he's in peak form skill wise. I think you could put his skills, like Sox is talking about his TFT fundamentals. I think you could put Goobum's skills up against any player in that field, and he would either be like even to them or have an edge. And against many of the players in the field, he had significant edge. But then when you couple that with the prep work he did and the knowledge he had of all of the different outs and trees, I think there was essentially no amount of low rolling that stops him from getting to day 2. Now it gets harder as it goes. His edge gap is going to get smaller, right, as the people who were weaker on the patch are fizzling out in the tournament. And you can't guarantee a world spot because there is some amount of low rolling that you could throw at him on the final day. But I think that a lot of the times when we talk about TFT, there's this inclination from pros and fans to say that the edges are really small and that it's mostly RNG. And I can tell you, having studied a lot of TFT over the course of the last 2 years, that is just not true. In a given event, the edge between the actual best player in the field and the 5th best player in the field can be monumental, way, way bigger than we see in poker. It's the equivalent of taking, someone that understands like understands GTO now and like tournament theory now and putting them in tournaments like 20 years ago. Like the game has evolved so much. Like I played a lot of serious poker, 15 years ago, and it's very clear to me right now that I suck at poker. And that's okay. It's a hobby for me, but like, the core thing here is that the gaps between the best and the worst in a given field of TFT right now is much, much bigger than we're looking at when we're doing some of these poker analogies.
But again, like, so first of all, I like to say, I think there's, again, like a lot of like hindsight analysis because people like overwhelmingly thought Nubao was a favorite, but let's just say for sake of argument, and this is, I probably believe this to be true. Let's say Goobums is the best player. What do you think his top 4 rate or top 1 rate on day 1 of regionals is? Like, if you give me a number, then we can work from that. But you can't just say he's 100% because I don't think his top 4 rate is 100% in day 1. And if in regional field, like it's not that soft.
Yeah,
it's not
that's
even
true.
100% on ladder. Like I don't think you get 100% top 4 on ladder against Masters players. So I don't see how you can say it's 100% in day 1.
Well, let's not bring ladder to this.
Okay, I know Socks says he can 100% top 4 on ladder.
No,
but...
if he wanted to try, like if any of us wanted to try and like actually study like ladder theory, like Setsuko kind of does, or like reorients the plays out entirely to bully ladder players, we can probably not get 100% rate top 4 rate because that's obviously impossible for any human. But like I think a 90 to 95% is well within reason for a top 4.
I mean, like I think like a bot could do like that much, and I think like if you got really good at it, I think you can. But I think Setsuko is like a great example where it's like you're saying he's one of the best at it. I mean, his top 4 rate is closer to 70% than like.
Yeah, but that's Setsuko spams infinite games. He's streaming while he plays his games. He has literally no incentive to put his full self into it. I think Socks is describing a world in which like you treat ladder like it's regionals, but regionals for $1 million, right? That would be the litmus test.
Yeah, I guess I still disagree that like he will be able to get 90% top 4 rate.
Well, okay, 90 probably is exaggeration. Unless like he's tournament mode constantly, playing against ladder players constantly.
Right,
like,
so I'm saying like hypothetically,
I don't think the edge is that big. But the thing is that let's just use Aesah 75%, or like let's just say your average placement is 75% top 4 rate, and what is let's just say it's I don't know what's a good average placement 3 point like 2.8 or something. 2.8 is insane, so maybe 3.0 average, which is pretty insane.
That would be record breaking for an average placement. Like the best average placement I've ever seen in a tournament was Ramblin' in Piltover Cup, which was 2.8, and it was like it hasn't been seen before in tournament, apart from maybe if you are only looking at like a
let's
1
use
day
3.0.
sample.
Let's just use 3.0.
So I'm saying like even if that is your true win rate, you're by far the best player in NA. That is your true win rate. There's still like a pretty good chance, like your chance of not making day 2 is higher than like seeing a Jinx at level 8. And like we've all seen a Jinx at level 8.
But wait a second. What is the likelihood? So what do you actually need average placement wise to make it to day 2 of regionals, right? Because it's a third of the field. So your average placement needs to be like.
Wait, Jinx level 8 is only like what 4%?
4% for any legendary, 5 unit slots, like 8 legendaries possible.
See, that's the thing. I think 4% is actually like low enough where like it doesn't happen. That's saying like that. Wait,
but
that's
it
saying
does
like,
happen.
I know. I understand from poker perspective, but that's saying 19 tournaments in 20 you make it.
Okay, that's also I'm saying using this hypothetical, very exaggerated number. I don't think. Okay, Goobums is probably the best player in regionals. I don't think he was that good to have that big of an edge. Let's just say 2.8 true average.
Okay, as someone who plays with Goobums, I practice a lot with Goobums. I assure you, his edge over the rest of the NA field was monumental. Like, monumental. And it's probably not 3.0 average, but it's easily somewhere within the reasons of like 3.2 to 3.5.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like, I agree with that, but I'm saying, like, even at that number, you're actually, like, pretty likely, like, to not make day 2. That's all I'm saying.
We need a mathematician. We actually need someone to run the numbers on this because I don't actually know. I did want to kind of bring one thing up, and this actually is something all 3 of you could probably answer. Bryce, you talked about when you first joined the call, saying like that you would be able to tell that the gap between the best player and the 5th best player in a tournament is pretty wide. The problem with that is that the amount of work and also the adjustment for variance is so monumental to actually understand like the best 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, like even the panel, which like you could argue some people don't really put that much work into it. Like how confident could we even say, how confident could you be to list the top 5 players in any given tournament. I feel like you couldn't be that confident, right?
You can't be that confident because someone posted in chat earlier. I thought this was an interesting analogy that it's like everyone's taking a test, but everyone's taking a different test, right? And that's sort of true. You're all taking a test within the same subject matter, but the questions are randomized, and who knows what what is going to get put before someone and how they're going to be able to respond. If you give a somewhat narrow player, right? Like for example, you go back to like DQA making worlds in set 4, and you look at the test that he got, and it was like, okay, what we have proven is that when you give DQA KO lines, he's a beast. Right. But that's really all you proved. And if you gave him other lines, you probably would have proved something completely different. I think that if you go back and watch the play closely, you can figure out, was someone just getting outs that they're uncomfortable in? Were they high rolling? Were they mid rolling and making it work? Were they low rolling and making it work? And not everyone is created equal. Like if you watch Ramkev's games from last regionals, right? Because he didn't play in this regionals. Ramkev low rolled like crazy in set 5 regionals, and he still barely missed. And most people in Ramkev's spot would have completely flamed out and would have gotten in like bottom 3 in points. And the fact that he barely missed is a testament to his skill. That was obviously a different format. It was 16-8, so it's harder. But yeah, you really do have to eye test. And Aesah is talking about hindsight analysis. I don't think it's hindsight analysis from the perspective of like, yes, we did not realize going into the tournament how big of a gap Goobums had over the other players, but when you watch the games in the tournament, not just Goobums games with the other players, it becomes very clear that gap existed. And it's not results oriented bias. Goobums didn't win regionals, but if you watch his games, it was pretty clear he was the best player at regionals.
No, I'm not talking about that. You're talking about like really specific things, and I'm not disagreeing with you with that. I'm just saying like all these really specific things are the difference between someone with like a 3 average placement or a 5 average placement. But I'm saying like even at the best like 3 average placement, which is like as good as like realistically any player can do in set 6, I think the skill cap is higher than that potentially. But I think like even at that level, you still have a high chance of flaming out. And I also want to bring up on the last Don't Talk If You Don't Know, featuring Ramblin and Robinson, I think. At the very start of the show, they were talking about China finals on Teamfight Talk Show right before Worlds. I think a lot of top NA players they watched VODs and they kind of unanimously agreed Huan Mi was the best Chinese player going in before Worlds. But then after Worlds, 2 out of the 6 Chinese players made day 3, and Ramo was like, oh, well, those 2 were the best players. And it's like, I actually completely disagree with that. I think any of those 2 out of 6 players could have made day 3 if we were to redo that tournament.
I think that it's because you're working from imperfect information from the outset, right? So like everyone's saying that Nubal was by far the best player going to regionals. I think we're overvaluing his performance at Challenger Series and his performance on ladder leading up to it.
Well, actually, I want to point out real quick for the Nubal in tournament thing, because I want to interject because we always use Nubal as the quintessential example of someone who everyone agrees is the best player in theory, but has never proven the results, right? Like everyone keeps using that. But I mean, from like multiple gameplay tournament analysis, I'm pretty sure Nubal just has like tournament jitters, or he's not like focused for tournaments. It's like exterior factors.
Yeah,
I don't know if that counts.
I agree with that.
Interesting. Okay. I wanted to interject real quick, just kind of in defense of you, Aesah, because I think like something Aesah is kind of pointing out that I feel like we're kind of skirting around is like if we take this analogy of like taking a test, what we're saying is hypothetically, Nubal is given a test where he knows by heart 90% of the subject matter, but is only tested on 10% of it, and it's that 10% that he doesn't know. Like obviously that is an extreme example of it, but like the people who go out day 1, there's a world where the best player in the region goes out day 1 because they were only tested on the subjects they didn't study. And that's the part of TFT that like the variance kicks in, and it really, forces us to be okay with making a certain level of hindsight analysis and a certain level of saying like the reputation and the results do have to weigh at least a certain amount, because it's impossible within an 18 game sample size to really understand where these gaps are.
Yeah, I just want to say like one last thing. This will be the last thing I say on the various topic,
Sure.
But
Yeah,
it's just like
on after.
I think like when we use like Nubal and Goobums, there's definitely more like like we're more connected to them, like as just NA players, of course. So, but I think like just using China for example, like if we were to replay Worlds, like just like somehow rewind time, but then like the TFT matches are different, replay Worlds, what are the chances? Let's just say we can even simplify it and say like 2 out of the 6 Chinese players are going to make day 3. What are the chances it's going to be exactly Lilu and the other guy whose name sounds like Lilu? I forgot his name, but what are the chances it's going to be exactly going to be those two? I think it's incredibly low. I don't think you
very
have to
low.
say
I
they're
agree.
the best players because they made day 3.
I agree.
I agree with that.
think we can all agree there, and that's a good. I think let's stop it there because I think this is a topic that can be talked about in circles endlessly. We're never really going to get to a place where everyone agrees. But Bryce, appreciate you coming on. Before you go, is there anything you want to shout out?
Shout out to you. It's a great show. Thanks for having me on. Enjoyed the debate, boys, and catch you next time.
All right.
Love you,
See you
Bryce.
later, Bryce.
All right, later.
All right, let's just move right into it. We kind of lingered on that topic a bit. It was good discussion, but I think we're ready for some new calls. Lawrence is here. Lawrence, where are you calling from?
Hi there. I'm calling from Oregon again.
All right. Yes. Second time caller.
Cool,
what do you want to talk about tonight?
Hi there. So I did hear Aesah just say he was going to not say much more on Variance, but I might be delving into it just a little bit simply because he's here.
We'll cater it. We'll cater it in a way that's more productive.
Okay, let's give that a shot. So in my take is that in sports, people commonly want to like crown a champion, and so that's why we kind of tend towards these like playoffs form of low games in short amount of time period. But in a hypothetical like long form tournament, like if you included a say regular season along top of this, I think that half of the prize pool should actually go to the player that forms the best in the regular season. So like if there's like a top 8, you would give like half the prize pool to those players, and then the other half would go to the top 8 in the finalists.
So you're saying when you're talking about finalists, you're talking about like the regional finals, whatever like the world's qualification is?
Correct. Like this is slightly different than the format that's right now.
Yeah.
So I guess to like maybe frame this, say like there's a structure where people play in a regular season and they go into a playoffs, and that's it. And then there's like just the winner thing, like this, like separate from like the regionals right now and going into worlds. So like they have like say a 30 game regular season going into a like 3 best of 6 playoffs, maybe like a little less than that. I think that half of the prize pool should actually go to that top 8 from the regular season, as well as the top 8 from finals.
Interesting. Okay. I have a couple of thoughts. Aesah or Sox, do one of you want to go for it? Or if you don't, then I can kind of reroute this question or kind of give a response first. Do either one of you have any thoughts?
Oh, sure. I was going to say, isn't that already kind of the thing? Like, I'm not, maybe not half, but like at least 33% of the prize pool is going towards like Piltover Cup, Song Cup, Innovation Cup, Challenger Series. Like at least 33%, right? Probably 50% almost.
They
Is
pay
that
out
true?
pretty deep. Actually, wait, don't they pay out every spot, right?
I don't know.
In like Challenger Series, I think they pay out every spot, right?
Isn't that fairly high? I'm not sure, but it should be like 50%, right?
Well,
like 33, 50?
They definitely pay out day 3 for the open bracket events, right? Which is top.
No,
32.
not the open brackets. They don't pay shit for those.
Oh,
Do
really?
they?
Oh, is it only top 8s? No, I'm pretty
I mean,
sure.
it's mid-set. There's mid-set. There's Challenger. I don't even know,
Okay,
to be honest.
let me kind of cater this a different way. Instead of talking about payouts, what I want to talk about, and forgive me, Lawrence, I'm going to kind of take this in a slightly different direction, is how we value players. So here's a different example. Let's say we do have some sort of circuit, 4 games per week over the course of a set that leads up into a playoffs. Should we be doing things like valuing players who have the best average placement week over week? Like once a player hits, for instance, like I mean, I talk about Solus a lot. Like I know it's kind of memed on, but like Solus had an incredible average placement over the course of 73 games in set 6. Obviously, it's split up between different patches, even like mid set, whatever. But like, is there a world where we have enough games over the course of like a regular season where you could confidently say, like, if a player plays 80 tournament games in a single set, then like I think that's a pretty large sample size to be able to make some level of like judgment about them, right?
Maybe I'll go first, but I feel like 99%, 95% of those games don't even matter. Like, why would you take it? Why would you take into? Why would you? Okay, like let's just say for I don't know, for me, NA regionals is like and maybe Misset are like only the tournaments that truly matter to me. Like no matter how poorly I play in most of the other tournaments, as long as I put in like the bare minimum effort, I will qualify for NA regionals. So why would I even bother like trying? I don't get it. Maybe Ace has a different opinion on it.
Yeah, I guess I would say I kind of disagree because again, I'm saying like the numbers, I'm using the baseline. I know there's a lot of things you can do to get better at TFT, but I'm saying you are so good at TFT, you're top scoring 70% of your games in tournament lobbies. I'm saying you're already doing all those things, you're paying attention to all your outs, you're top scoring 70%. That is about the same win rate as a single table satellite in a poker tournament. And every single poker player has gone through 100, 200 game streak losses at that roughly that win rate. So I think like what Gangly said, like you can reasonably make assumptions. Sure, more data is better. 80 games is a lot, but you could be the best player and still not make it in 80 games. That being said, I also want to talk about something else that's tangentially related. Is it might sound like I'm like whining about bad variance as like why I didn't win regionals, but variance is actually really good for me in regionals. Because if there's no variance at all, then why am I even going to bother playing if just like Goopums, Setsuko, or whoever, they're just going to win every time. So variance is actually a really good thing. And that's why we all play TFT. That's why it's fun. That's why like chess, like classical chess has very little variance. That's why it's like people are not hyped to watch classical chess because Magnus Carlsen is just like, he's just not going to be beat. But yeah. So I think like variance is really good.
Just to back up what Aesah is saying, I can actually attest to after he won Challenger Series, he basically said everything he said in this podcast. He talked about in my interview with him. We kind of talked about the same exact thing where you gave the idea of like anybody in that field could have beaten you on that given day. And actually hearing you say right now that you felt like you were one of the weaker players in the finals, I feel like, kind of makes a lot of sense. Is kind of a testament to what you were saying even back then. But so let me ask you two this then, like what would need to happen for you? Because the way I think of like TFT, a TFT league is like, I would love for there to be something like the LCS where I tune in every weekend or I tune in every week. I don't need to watch 3 5-hour broadcasts to enjoy it. Like I just want to watch for a couple hours a week where my favorite player is actually trying to win and like they're trying to prove themselves and make worlds, whatever. Like what needs to happen for you two to actually care week over week about the games you're playing for whatever this like circuit or league is?
I mean, I care, but I know like Sock says like there's periods he doesn't care, but like I care about doing my best in every event.
I think I'm just jaded, honestly. I mean, I'm back in set 2. I'm back in set 2 and set 3, set 4 when I was competing. I mean, I definitely cared. Maybe not every event, but like I care for like most of the major minor events.
Yeah, I mean, even like Mortdog Madness, I try to get my team to scrim, but they're like, Soul's like, nah, I'm busy playing Lost Ark.
See, no, that's the thing. Like, none of us actually really cared for Mortdog Madness. I'm sure Aesah did, but like, we cared a little. I cared a little bit. I played like 15, 20 games before Mortdog Madness. But, like, the 2 weeks prior to Mortdog Madness, 0. I do want to address your point, mainly though, the one where about every week to week. Okay. I mean, we don't get paid enough to actually do things like that. It's so much effort, and it's so unenjoyable to actually be the best player every single week. First off, that's a lot of work. Second off, you have to change it so often. So every 2 weeks, you have to put in even more work, and it's just like, that sounds terrible. Nobody wants to go through that. Like even Aesah probably wouldn't want to go through that. Like that's just too much.
Yeah, I mean. Because Sox has a job, so it's like not really realistic, and a kid. Like for me, like it's just only TFT right now. But I couldn't do anything else for sure. So
yeah,
like the only reason why TFT is playable for me is because like relevant tournaments are spaced far enough apart where if I need to prep for them, I'll prep for them like the few weeks in advance, right? And it's not just a constant like grind.
It's tough because on a certain level, the what it would take to make the players care about it enough to like want to compete week over week, it sounds like would be like the investment from outside sources to make it viable for them to do it full time. The problem is without us doing something that's bringing in the viewership, that's bringing in the investors, we're not going to get that outside support. And so we're kind of just stuck in this endless loop. And I know, like, I'm sure a lot of people who are watching, I've probably seen like some of the things I've been talking about on Twitter recently about like, how our community really does need to feel a bit more empowered. And I'm just going to kind of like go on a quick tangent and we'll kind of return to the show here, where I really do want to just say that, like, you know, there are people who are doing these open bracket events. There are people who are doing like, you know, grassroots content, who are really trying to make things grow. I think that it's really, really important that we start to support those grassroots efforts, because the reality is without the grassroots efforts, empowering players, empowering creators, finding ways to find supplemental income for these streamers, for the players, for the production, whatever it is, like our scene it needs to start somewhere. And to me, I feel like it needs to just start from the grassroots. The problem is that grassroots growth is slow but steady, and it's not inflated, which is great because we're not going to end up with a product that just has like a ton of money and absolutely nothing to show for it. But it is not quick. I'm also kind of stretching this a little bit longer because Sox is going to be back in just a minute. But Lawrence, did you have anything to follow up actually while we're here?
That was an awesome tangent, actually. It was much better than the initial point I came in with, say that. But I do think it was really cool to actually hear like the conversation end up happening about that, where I think it was really important to point out that variance does kind of create that hype. And if the best player wins every time, that hype kind of like dies down, like was mentioned. And that's like, but then that also means that those players may not feel as motivated to be the best if they're like, wow, this variance I can just get screwed here, or like I might just lose out on day one. Like it's like a weird balancing act that I think needs to really be delved into. And I don't really have like a statement on that, but I think it was really cool to hear that particular point being made. Okay, so I have an opinion here that is kind of controversial. I don't even know if I agree with this. I'm going to say it anyway, though. For that exact reason, what you just said of like, because of the variance in the game, it lowers the motivation to actually get good. That's actually why, like, at a certain level, making content and like reputation and storylines that aren't 100% true, but make sense based on the results we've seen is actually kind of helpful. Because to a low level player, like if a player is a gold level player, there is a 99 out of 100 times, like if you put Aesah or Sox in their games, they will always win or top 4. Like they're never going to just go 8-8-8 in gold. So like for the majority of the player base, it really isn't about variance. And so to me, it's like if we're catering to the spectators, to the viewers, it's almost like okay to say, well, let's just sideline the variance and pretend it's not there just for a minute to say that like this is the best player because he won. And even though it's not true, and that's what I'm saying, I don't even know if I agree, but like at a certain level, even though it may not be true, it's better for the spectator because it applies to them. Do you know what I mean?
No, I actually agree a lot, because like I talk a lot about variance because it's just like when I hear something that I think is just like I think it's very wrong, I just want to like say it. But I love like the power rankings and stuff. I think they're super fun. But yeah.
I also hard agree. I mean, it's super evident because NA is like by so far better than the EU, it's laughable. So like what you said right now, there's literally zero variance. NA is like 10 times, not even 10 times, like 100 times better than the EU.
All right,
the real hot take.
I think that's
not even a hot take.
I'm just messing.
That's the least hot take on the show so far.
That's
like
all the time we
saying
have for
casually.
this take.
It's in the
Lawrence.
freezer.
Before you go, Lawrence, is there anything you want to shout out?
No, just shout out to Gangly. This is such an awesome space. I'm glad you're starting to do this. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks again for calling in. Hope to see you next time.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, yeah, we've had some really good, there's been a lot of great conversation coming out of these calls. I'm super happy, proud of all of you, chat. These are some great calls tonight, but let's just go straight into our next one. And Inspires is here. Inspires, you're muted right now, but where are you calling in from?
Oh, hey. How's it going, everyone? I'm calling from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Very nice. And what do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I don't think it's a super hot take or anything, but I just want to maybe get some discussion on. I just feel like this year's Worlds felt like the most underwhelming, I guess, out of all of them, and kind of with how well received Set Six was. Ending with such a disappointing Worlds from a viewer's perspective, of course, feels like a step backwards from all the progress that TFT has kind of made in such a short amount of time, with all the, I guess, all the hype that was around it. And I do know that because of like the timing with like a Lost Ark coming out, and also with the time zone difference that made TFT kind of suffer. But just want to get your guys' take on essentially how you guys felt of the whole set was for you guys from a competitive standpoint, or even from like a viewer perspective from for some of you during like Worlds, right?
Sure,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Let's start with just Worlds first. Aesah, Socks. Did you
Okay.
two feel like it was Worlds less hype than previous Worlds this year?
I have a couple things. So one is I heard like the camera people, like whoever's like controlling the camera and the quality, like that's obviously not something that like we control, like us, like we can control that, and like that's just like a fluke basically, right? But then the other thing with it being hype, I think again is like some more. Again, I think it's like some more hindsight, because imagine it's like day three, the exact same thing, except checkmate didn't happen on that game, and then like Goobums comes back and win. I think people would think that, like they'd be like, oh man, Worlds is super hype, right? So it's just like, yeah, I think it's just because we're all from NA and NA didn't win.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit biased from my from my side as well. Yeah, considering I'm from Mini.
Socks, what do you think of Worlds this year?
I mean, I didn't watch Worlds. I don't actually, I don't actually watch or like didn't really. I mean, it's kind of bad. If I'm not playing it, if I'm not prepping for it, I don't really watch TFT. Actually, I think TFT is pretty bad to watch. The thing is that we should discuss this at some point. I know you guys discussed that at some point earlier. Like you briefly discussed it, but like, I mean, I kind of want to like to talk about like ideas to make TFT more watchable as well. Like if I'm not personally invested in getting better at TFT, which the moment I'm done playing TFT, I don't really care about getting better. I don't really care too much about watching Worlds, and even though like, you know, some of my boys are in the finals, I mean, I mean I don't need to watch them to support them, right? So I don't really watch too much TFT actually. So
Yeah, I actually so I really like watching TFT, but it is sometimes really hard to justify the amount of time it takes to watch an entire tournament. Actually, I would say most of the time it's really hard for me to justify watching an entire tournament, especially just with like, you know, the other people have it as well. People have a family, they have responsibilities on the weekends, whatever it is, like taking 5 hours per day over the course of 3 days is a lot of time to put into a weekend. I don't know if it was actually just that North America didn't win and that's why it wasn't hype, because I know like set 4, set 5, I was pretty invested into those worlds. This time around, I also kind of felt like I wasn't that upset that I missed it, because I talked about it on the last episode where I basically like I watched 1.5 games of the final day, and then I like went to go take care of my kids, and then when I came back, the tournament was just over. I think like the fact that it was 4 games felt really bad. That's probably just a failure of the checkmate format. I don't really have an answer though, to be honest, of like why it wasn't as hype, because I would say for the majority of set 6, I felt like every single tournament was super hype. Even like Piltover and Zon, which like are open brackets, you don't know every single player in the lobbies that you're watching. Like they still felt so hype just because of, you know, like the freshness of augments. There was still like a ton of really great players playing in the field. Maybe a part of that is honestly just like kind of at this point in time, watching a tournament where you don't know how many players were there total, 24. So like real, you know, some people really only know their representatives and nobody else. So like to watch a lobby on day 2 where there's like nobody that you're rooting for, it's like, why am I even watching this game? You know? I don't know the answer to that though, unless they're like making feature pieces on every single one of the players that also we're probably not going to watch if we're not from that region anyway. Like I don't really know the answer. I'm curious, Inspires, like have you been watching Worlds for a while? Was there a certain Worlds in particular that you really enjoyed watching?
So I didn't play TFT since like set 1, like a lot of these guys like pros did. But for me, I started watching TFT at the end of set 3.5 into set 4. And I felt like as a new player coming into this game, set 4, watching that Worlds, I was very excited to play set 5. And even though set 5 was like memed or like a little bit of truth behind like it wasn't like the greatest set, I still felt that Worlds. I'm not sure. Maybe it was the storylines going in. Maybe I was just there was hype between me as a new player and like this new game. There was some little bridge there, but it just felt like going into day 1 of Worlds of set 5, I was very excited to watch. And for some reason, even though I didn't know all the ins and outs, all the units, and all, I was still a new player. It felt like even if I didn't know exactly what was happening on my screen, it felt like it was an exciting game for some reason. So. And then I didn't get that same spark for set 6. I guess the Worlds for set 6. Yeah.
I wish I had like a really great, concise answer.
Oh, I know the answer. I know the
what's
answer.
up? All right, what is it?
It's because this is 100% was going to clear everything. It's going to be perfectly clear after this. So, okay, set 3, Gangly made a video, 5 players to watch our Worlds. Set 4, Gangly made a video, 5 players to watch our Worlds. Set 5, Gangly made 1. Set 6, Gangly did not make 1.
I thought you were gonna say Soju didn't make it.
Oh yeah, Soju didn't.
No, Soju never makes it to Worlds.
But
so
Soju never make it to any
There's
Worlds.
no change there.
Oh, I don't have anything to compare
Oh
it
my
to,
god,
so.
I'm a genius.
That's it. That's it.
No,
That's
honestly,
the answer there.
Figured it out.
No, honestly,
Figured it out.
without like no cap, that actually adds a lot. Like no, like unironically, I watched every single one of Gaming's things before Worlds. It's always super hype, including Set 5. Even though I didn't watch Set 5 or Set 6 Worlds, but like Set 5, I watched it, and it just made the experience way better. I feel like people who create content like Gaming, I mean, for like me, someone who watches most of the content, it's really, it actually is the kind of the make or break for a lot of these players to watch out for. Because I actually don't know anyone without some videos like that.
I'd agree from a viewer and like someone that consumes content for sure. Like
So we can
good
explain
TFT
for this one.
content really helps.
I think on Riot's side, one of the issues is like I would say even my videos are kind of evidence of it. Is that like when you make content like that, it tends to be high impact, so to speak, but low reach. And like at a certain level, like a company like Riot is only going to they have to care about the reach, right? But like to me, I did a poll on my YouTube once of like if you subscribe to my channel, like what rank are you in TFT? And it was like 60% or something were GM or higher. Like the majority of people who watch my kind of content are super invested into the game, which is great. Like I love it because it allows me to have really interesting conversations and, kind of make assumptions in my pieces. The problem is that, if we're trying to reach the average viewer, for whatever reason, that kind of piece doesn't cater to them, which is weird when I think about it. Like even talking about it out loud, like actually, why wouldn't that cater to a random gold player?
Wait,
like
why would it? No, my question is why would gold players want to watch Worlds?
I mean, I watch Worlds for LCS, and like I haven't played
I watch
for a long time.
I watch Worlds for League too, but like I watch it but I watch it because I think the League is fun to watch, or like Smash. I don't even play Smash, but like Smash finals are fun to watch.
Yeah, I think it's just in the end of the day, like we all have our opinions about like what we liked about sex, whatever. But honestly, like we're such a small minority of the viewers that it actually doesn't matter what our opinions are. Like it doesn't matter at all. Like anyone in here.
I think fundamentally, it's just that there needs to be more discussion about how to make TFT more fun to watch, which there always has been. Like, but there's no like. I mean, I've never really talked about it with the other guys. I don't know if you guys talk about it with other people, but like there's got to be a way to make TFT like more fun to watch, right? That's not just as more doesn't require that much more work. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like these turn-based games, just like because even like Magic and Hearthstone, like they don't get like a lot of viewership, and those are like the biggest games of like the genre.
Yeah, no, but those are things. So those are pure strategy games. Like the things that TFT, the reason why TFT is watchable right now, like I play like those strategy games as well, and those kind of strategy games are not watchable on Twitch. But TFT is watchable on Twitch because TFT is a strategy game disguised as an action game. So I don't know. I feel like there's a way.
Yeah, it's tough because like when you look at the viewership of TFT when it's just like a player randomly streaming and they like are able to casually talk about their mindset, their thought process, blah blah blah, like how they're getting to their end game board. It's like really fun, and when they get to kind of be memey and get to do like these big reactions, like people love that. The problem is like, you know, when I tweeted the other day asking about like, oh, what would make TFT, what would make a casual fan into TFT, and a lot of people said things like, oh, I want to just like see the POV of the player actually playing, and I want to hear them talking. But like, Socks, if you are on the main stage, top 8 of Worlds, like how much are you talking to chat like in that
you're
tournament?
not.
Exactly.
No, for these tournaments, you're not. But the thing is, like, here's the thing. Here's like the fundamental thing that I think might reach more people that like, especially super competitive tournaments like this, is that like, after watching Worlds, it's hard to notice like I think like it's basically we need to frame it in an point of view where like these players are much better, maybe like a, I don't know if that's circular reasoning, but like in a strategic sense, like some of the plays that the world players made are insane. Like, and like after hearing Goons talk about it, like holy fuck, the things that I think even average players would be like blown away by them. Like one example I will tell you consistently is that every single game that Goobums can. Okay, we talk about items every single day. Every single game at 3-2, Goobums puts 3 items on 3 different units. Even if he could put those on the same unit and it could be like a 1v9, he'll put them on 3 different units because he wants to hit have a chance of hitting cybernetics. Now, in a main world broadcast, I didn't watch it, but I bet that it was not even mentioned a single time. And like other plays, like another play that I just made recently in the Mortdog Madness 4v4 tournament, I leveled to 9 at one of the weirdest times in TFT because my teammate Pressman was at 1 life and he was guaranteed to lose the next round, and then the EU player was also like really low, and I had to deal a super high amount of damage to the EU player to actually guarantee that Pressman goes 7th and the EU player goes 8th. So that happened, but like that was never even brought up by the main broadcast. Obviously, it's not their fault because so many things are going on.
How could they know?
Yeah, how could they know? But I'm just saying, like TFT actually maybe has potential to make watching it like relatively interesting. Like I have no reason to ever watch the main broadcast because, no offense to the main broadcast, they're just like filling it with like dead talk. Like there's nothing interesting to happening in the main broadcast. No offense to the casters, but like I mean, Froden's really good at coloring things. I think Froden's my favorite caster because like, the way he casts things is very hype. But like even when Froden's casting, I don't really watch it because there's no reason to watch the main broadcast. Who cares? But when someone else is when people are co-casting, and this is why the co-cast stream always gets more views. They're talking like really really deep into strategy. So like, half of it's backed by the personality of the person co-casting, but like the co-casting is way more watchable, way more interesting to me, because they actually like make an attempt to discuss strategy. Now I don't know if that's a hot take, but that's my take right now.
Aesah, do you have any thoughts before I bounce off of this?
You go ahead first.
Well, so the one thing I will say is that kind of circling back to a discussion we had way before about 4v4 having a lot of benefits. One of the things that we actually could implement is if we are having more team-based formats, we then have this opportunity to have, first of all, sponsored segments of, for instance, like the MLG Astro Listen In, like they used to do way back in the day of the like MLG Halo events, where we can have like these listen-ins of the teams actually discussing strategy and figuring out what they want to do. And we have the actual opportunity to hear Socks say that to his team of saying like, I'm going to level to 9 and try and, you know, get Prestovent to 7th. That's something that we would not be able to do if we're not actually using the voice comms, but we're not going to get those voice comms in a free-for-all format. So I do think that is like another, you know, and then being able to utilize that in the main broadcast as well, where like if the casters are able to call for voice comms to come in because, you know, they notice that there are a bunch of people that are really low in health, they want to hear like how the teams are dealing with that. It like brings a whole new layer of information that the casters can work with. And I hear what you're saying, Socks, but I will push back and say that I don't think the main broadcast is for you anyway. Like we're talking about it before, like the how do we reach new players? We don't reach new players by talking about things that are interesting to Socks, you know, because to them, they're not going to know what's going on. Like we have to make the broadcast interesting and entertaining to a player with a very baseline level of TFT knowledge.
Why is that the case, though? I mean, I'm just challenging.
Yeah. Because there are significantly more of them than there are of you.
No, but that's what I'm trying to challenge. Let's just say.
I also think. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say we should let Aesah talk, but I was gonna say that's what I'm trying to challenge. Why should we be reaching new players? Those aren't the people who are watching TFT. The people who watch TFT are like a lot of my friends who do care about watching TFT are the ones who are trying to get better, like between Plat, Diamond, Master, Grandmaster, and stuff. That's the people who actually like care about watching TFT. None of my new player friends watch TFT.
So you're saying it's more of like if you make the broadcast good and it caters to the players who are into it, then like over time it will just naturally draw players who are getting into the game. Is that because like to me what I'm saying is like if our casters are catering the information they're providing on cast to players who already have to have a certain level of knowledge in order for them to understand what they're saying, and maybe I'm being like a bit hyperbolic with that, but like to me I feel like the casters need to cater to the players who are getting into the scene, and maybe they have like a certain level of baseline knowledge, but like they can't really assume that much of the viewer. I don't know.
I'll let Aesah talk since I've been kind of going at it.
Yeah, go for it, Aesah.
I mean, I don't think this is a topic that like I feel super strongly about, but I will say like the socks example you used earlier about the cybernetic. I mean, to someone to like an average viewer, like you're saying, like that would be really cool because like mind blowing information to you, but to the average viewer, like I don't feel like that's different than them saying just like, oh, this guy put his tank in the corner because the other guy had a blitzcrank or something like that. To you might sound really simple, but I don't really differentiate those two things. They're just like different levels of like strategy.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
Like the value that the player will assume that play has is so like arbitrary to them. Like you could also say right before 3-2, Goobums rolls for 4 mercenaries every single time on the off chance that he gets mercenary heart and gets to play 5 mercs at 3-2. And like a player who's like brand new is going to be like, that sounds like a good play to me.
No, that's what I'm trying to say. New players aren't watching the stream. Isn't that the crux of the argument? Like that would be cool. I mean, like okay, that really depends. Like it's like saying like a regular Zed outplay is cooler than Faker's Zed outplay against Ryu.
I guess I would just say I get what you're saying, but I also think like what you're saying about the strategy broadcast or the non-main broadcast. I think people just want to watch like their favorite streamers because I watch every game in Worlds. I know like by far the most strategy intensive broadcast because Soju didn't stream day 2. I watched Soju's broadcast for day 1 and day 3. But he didn't stream day 2. So for day 2, I watched Ramblin' and Eniko stream it. Sorry, I didn't watch main broadcast for any of them. But Ramblin' and Eniko streamed every day, and they by far were the deepest like strategy broadcasts. But like the thing is, if like the main let's say Worlds is going on, and then Soju's streaming Valorant and BoxBox is streaming Mario Speedrun, and like someone else like. Most people just want to watch Soju and like BoxBox or whoever's.
You still have to be entertaining, right? You still have to be entertaining. Not No Flame too, Nico and Ramon, but when they cast, they're not particularly entertaining.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fair, definitely. And that's like I think the extreme example of like someone who's already has like a high level of knowledge in TFT would enjoy that stream because they get to hear the nuances that they normally like may not think of themselves. But otherwise it like is just going to go over the head and not be interesting of a lot of players. I do want to make it clear though, Socks, like I am kind of pushing back on what you're saying. I also do agree though that the main broadcast is not where it should be. I actually do think that like the main broadcast could be utilizing like a plethora of like stats in particular, like
stats is a good one.
I think like I don't know, I would love to see like even random like arbitrary stats of seeing like the average amount of gold a player typically has at 4-1 or 3-2, like just to see like what kind of player tends to roll deep on those intervals and what kind of player tends to greed for like a fast 8, right? Like those are kinds of things where if we had the stats and graphics that the casters had access to, where we could start to categorize players live on broadcast of like, well, now we're in a lobby of 2 greedy players, a lost streak, and a fast 8 player. Like these are really simple ways to make put a player in a box that like a random new viewer can say like, I like the fast 8 player because he's greedy and he's going to go high variance, high risk, whatever. Like, maybe it may not be true, but like 100% of the time. But if we can categorize them to make them more digestible, and it's going to be true 70% of the time, like that sounds good enough to me. I don't know. Like I think there are definitely more ways to make the game more digestible on the broadcast.
Well, I actually think that sounds like such a good idea because someone made a Reddit post on just like after Challenger series, they did one for like me, Setsuko, and some like 2 other players, like just a graph on like how much gold and what level we were on different stages.
Oh,
I feel like basically what you're saying, I feel like would be like, I feel like that would be super cool. Where it's like basically like with a baseball player stats, right? You have like, oh, this guy hits more home runs, but this guy gets first base more often. And it's like having something like that would get like players something to relate to because they can also look up their own stats as well and be like, oh, this guy plays like me.
It helps build storylines, correct?
Yeah,
So that's what players
exactly.
want.
Like,
Yeah.
I when I was younger, I was super into baseball. Real quick, sorry, Sox. I just want to get this out here real quick. That like when I was younger, I was super into baseball, and I would almost never watch games live. I would typically just like read the box scores in the newspaper that my dad had the next day. Because like to me, at a certain level, like reading about the players allowed me to kind of like use my imagination to like put them in these boxes and understand like who is like the superhero that I love based on like the things I'm reading about them. And like if we could kind of have something like that in TFT, I just think it makes it so much easier for these new fans to have like idols and storylines that they're coming up with that we're perpetuating on broadcast and like outside of the actual event itself. What were you saying, Sox?
I was gonna say that hold on, I'm typing into a chat. I was gonna say that shit. I was gonna say this is so free. What the hell? You just pull up Tactics Talk Tools, put it on the screen for all 8 players. Bada bing, bada boom. Everyone can relate to that.
That's the thing though, but ladder is different.
No, obviously it's a joke. It's a joke.
And the biggest problem is like I've kind of looked into this a little bit and I can't find an answer. So if anyone from Riot is listening to this show right now, shoot me a DM on Twitter. But please give us access to the API of Tournament Realm so that we can actually pull the data that we're seeing on Tactics.tools into a database similar to Oracle's Elixir like they have in League. It's insane that we don't have the capacity to do that in our league, and yet you also are not providing, and you're not doing it yourselves. Like, if Riot is not going to do it themselves, then give us the tools to do it ourselves. That's like the most passionate and angry I'm going to be on this show, but it actually is really frustrating to me that we either need to be equipped with the tools to do it ourselves or it needs to be done for us. And I would rather us have the tools to do it ourselves because there are more of us than there are of you. And I guarantee you we could make something sick.
No, I think that would be really like having Tactics.tools for Tournament Realm and then going into Worlds and be like, yeah, this guy plays Sivir in like 80% of his games. Or like something like that would be like really cool.
And then this way you can see that GBA has a D in itemization. So does Goobans apparently, because he builds Zizirot, which is Tactics Tools for some reason sees it as like a D tier item.
Okay.
So I mean that Tactics Tools is obviously a joke because like it's not real data and it's a joke, but like I feel like there's it's just talking points that makes it more interesting for the it's just like the thing is that the main broadcast is so little information. It's laughable.
Okay, but how would you know if you don't watch the main broadcast?
No, I mean I do watch the main broadcast.
Okay.
When I play the tournament, I watch the main broadcast because I'm not trying to get entertained. I'm just trying to like use it to like meditate. Like watching the main broadcast is the best way to put you to hibernation right away. So you just use it. It's so effective.
All right, Inspires. I think that's all the time we have for this call. Is there anything you want to shout out before you go?
Not particularly. I just want to shout out to the TFT community and the TFT team at Riot for sure. They put in a lot of work, so yeah, big shout out to Mort and the team over there. And just shout out to all the entertainment streamers and the influencers like Kyuki. See you guys.
All right, thanks for coming on. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.
All right. I think we probably have time for one more call, and then we can wrap up after that. So I'm going to pull in our last caller of the night. Dehua, I actually still don't know how to pronounce your name. If you could actually pronounce it this time for me, that would be great. But where are you calling in from?
Oh, I'm calling in from Delaware. You can call me Dehua.
Dehua. All right, Dehua, what do you want to talk about tonight?
Oh, I hope I don't get flamed as much as last time, but here we go.
Oh, were you the Noob Owl take last time?
Yeah, and I know Aesah wrote a nice comment on Reddit, and yeah.
That's pretty much what we talked about today.
Yeah, but like here we go. I I was thinking about one. So like the past two tournaments, with Worlds and the Mortdog Madness tournament, really showed the vulnerability of EU in my mind. Losing to the Mickey Mouse Valorant team and not having anyone in the top 8 of Worlds. It just shows how incredibly bad the state of EU is, and especially the state of EU without their French players. And in my opinion, EU should lose 2 or 3 spots next Worlds due to these underperformances. And I guess maybe you could throw 1 spot only for French players.
Oh my gosh. So wait, so you're saying France is like what's it called when you're like taken apart from like a region?
Yeah, they can be like a sub-region, you know?
Like a sub-region, they have their own set of representatives and then EU gets like 1 or 2.
Yeah, I mean I think it's very obvious. It's like NA, a little bit gap, France, big gap EU, right? Rest of EU. So I just think that should be shown appropriately at Worlds.
Oh man.
Okay, here's my take. Actually. So, I mean, what's it called? Because, it says Aesah here, the results don't actually matter. That's not the point. Like, the results don't really tell you which one you're really stronger. Although, I will say that, like, if you watch EU play, which I did a lot before, and the regionals, yeah, EU is trash. But also, that being said, I watched NA and I watched my own games, and holy fuck. Oh my god, NA is arguably worse. Like, so that's my hot take because, like, I watch my own games, I'm like, holy fuck, I play worse than EU sometimes. EU is actually not that bad. NA is probably equally as bad. I would say on average, the median EU player is probably better than the median NA player, but I think the top NA player is way better than the top EU player. But that's only because KC Double refuses to stream because the EU players are a bunch of fucking sweats. They delete their VODs after they fucking play the game. It blows my fucking mind.
One of them
get better.
One of them had their VODs behind a paywall. I forget who it was.
No, 90% of them have their
crazy.
VOD behind their paywall. They are so cringe. Like, holy shit.
It actually gives you a big advantage if you're like taking, but I feel like it's really unfair because like you're taking everyone else's tech, but then you don't give your own tech.
Oh my god, these EU players are so cringe, dude.
So wait, so Socks, it sounds like you're saying the result of this set, obviously EU not getting the results they're looking for, you would probably attribute that more to like the variance than
that's variance 100%.
Okay.
That's not even debatable, I think.
Okay, so EU's not actually worse than OCE.
EU is not actually worse than OCE, yes.
Okay. Aesah, how familiar are you with EU?
Not super familiar. So I watched some EU players. So basically like the main reason I watch Worlds is because I still care about like getting better at TFT. Even like I know most people were checked out after Worlds. I'm still trying to pass that Suko. I'm ranked 2 right now. But like I watch VODs from Korea, China. I watch every region because I feel like every region has like a slightly different playstyle. So I watched like some of the rank 1, like like top 10 EU players. I did think from what I saw, I thought they were worse than NA, so I stopped watching EU players. I don't think they're like way worse or anything. And yeah, I mean like if you use the results of like Mortdog Madness, I'm pretty sure like EU and NA went pretty neck and neck. You could say like the NA players are like really checked out, which I think is fair. But EU also, I'm pretty sure had a team that was just like for fun as well. But I'm pretty sure like over like the sample size of the entire tournament, it was like pretty neck and neck.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I feel like I'm the least, well, I'm by far the least qualified to comment on the state of EU. So I'm going to kind of keep my own opinions to myself on this because I don't really have anything worth sharing. I will say that I really wish, and this is kind of a tangent, I guess, just because I don't know if we're really going to get that much more discussion out of this, but like, I really wish that we had more content kind of shining a spotlight on EU players, because to be honest, like for me, the players I watch in EU, like I watch like some of the Italian league. I really like Balotelli. I was watching Luque when he was playing a lot. And then obviously like there's like random players like Gunmay I've always been a big fan of, but like for the most part I don't even know like where to start when I'm watching EU. And unless I'm wrong, like I don't think there's anyone like producing interview content or like any sort of like player spotlight content in EU. And I could be wrong. I may just not be seeing that stuff. But I would really, really love to see more of like the narrative content being built up in EU, because at the very least, like when you have these sets, when you're underperforming, when the variance hit you wrong, like, I wish you still had something else to point to say, like, look at these other things that we've done this set. Because to me, like, looking from the outside in, I don't even know what happened in EU in set 6. And I would say, like, the majority of the NA player base is only going to see those results and just assume that, like, EU is not very good. Which, like, the best players are going to know that, like, they're, like Sock said, like, their median, like, challenger player or whatever, like, top player is probably better than ours. But the average viewer, the casual viewer, is going to have no idea that that's the case. So I think this set should be a wake-up call to EU that, like, if you have people who are itching to make content, like, fuel them, you know, like, be there to like lend them a helping hand and, like, make stuff happen, because sometimes the variance is just going to hit you the wrong way and you're left in the dust. And I wish you guys had some more content that you could kind of fall back on. So yeah, that's what I have to say about EU.
I mean, I always think like the best, like, there's always variance, but I always think the best, like, what's the word, like, softener of variance is just going to be ladder. So I know, like, there's, like, EU players that play on NA ladder and NA players that play on EU ladder. And I'm not sure, like, didn't Goose, like, get rank 1 in EU? And it's like, I don't know how hard, like, all these other different players are playing. Sock says big disagree on ladder reports in Twitch chat, but I mean, like, ladder, I mean, it's different than tournament, but it's like part of being good at TFT is your ability to adapt to any situation. And, like, every tournament's gonna be different, right? Like, day 1, day 2, day 3, and ladder, like, those are all gonna be 4 different situations. So I think, like, if you're good at TFT, like, I just think ladder's gonna be the biggest sample size. So, like, it might, if you're the best ladder player, it doesn't necessarily mean you're the best tournament player, but I think it's like a very high, it's just the best indicator, I think.
I mean, we can have a topic talk about this for hours, but I'm not going to get into it. But I was going to say on the tangential related thing. Actually, I mean, I think half the reason why EU talent pool is so shallow outside of France is because, like, basically it has to do with content creation. So if you watch you watch EU players, which I do follow on Twitch, there's not, like, if you watch all the EU streamers, they're all unwatchable. They're all boring. They don't really say anything. They're super, super unwatchable. But the one exception is Shanxi from France. He's kind of like the Faith Soju of TFT over there. And, like, I don't even speak French, and whenever I watch EU streams, Shanxi is the one who's casting it. He's actually hella fun to watch. He is very entertaining, even though I don't even understand what he's saying. It's just the way he speaks about things, like his general overall attitude. And he self-runs most of the tournaments, and he promotes them, and he streams them, and he, I think he even funds some of them. I'm not even sure about that one. So, like, he's, like, I would say, like, a huge reason why he is so successful. He's entertaining, he's personable. NA has, like, people like that, Keen, Soju, Milk. There's a lot of names not on this list. I'm kind of carried by them, but the point is, the reason why, like, EU France is so popular is because there is, like, attraction for that kind of stuff. I think it's actually very, very important.
Dehua, is there anything you want to add before we kind of wrap up?
Oh, am I allowed to ask, like, I just wonder, would you be down to combine NA and EU regionals? I feel like that would be lit, no?
I kind of
Would
like
that
it.
defeat the point of regionals, though?
Yeah, but, like, I guess, alright.
I mean, I think every tournament should. I just think we should have a lot more international tournaments, in my opinion. But, like, I feel like the way you phrase the question just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I feel like just every tournament should be international.
I also do want to say, I guess, kind of just to put a bow on it, I think it would be really, really sad if we actually took Worlds slots away from EU just from one underperforming, especially considering the fact they still have, like, a World Championship under their belt and we don't. So
that's just variance, though, you know.
That's true.
That's just variance. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. We have more Mortdog Madness wins, so, you know, at the end of the day, there we go.
Yeah, we win real tournaments.
All right, Dehua, I think that's all the time we have. But is there anything you want to say before you go? Anything you want to shout out?
Oh, EU, just stay free. You know, that's it.
True. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dehua. We'll catch you next time. Man. All right. Well, you know what? I feel like we've talked a lot about a lot today. This was a really good discussion. Got some great calls. Again, thanks to everyone who submitted your topics. We're sorry we couldn't get through all of them. We actually got a ton of takes this time around. Also, shout outs to Blind, who's going through those and making sure we got some good talking points for stream. But Aesah, Sox, thank you both for joining me. This has been a really fun discussion. Actually, I knew it was going to be good, but this was really good. I really enjoyed talking with you both. You both were really fun to have. Before we go, is there anything you guys want to shout out? Aesah, you want to start?
I mean, just TFT community, I guess, like Gangly, you for hosting this show. I also started my own podcast that you inspired based on yours. So yeah, just everyone in the TFT community has been like so nice and just welcoming. I don't feel like I don't feel like there's like anyone I don't like in it.
And Aesah's show is full open. You can find it on YouTube. I'm assuming I don't know if your channel is Aesah TFT. I'm sure if you look up Aesah TFT, you'll find his full open series. Episode 3 just dropped, I believe, right? Featuring Emily Wang, right?
Yeah, if anyone knows how to contact her, I need to like message her today for a deadline for the 1st or 8th. So yeah.
All right. Well, Emily Wang, if you're watching, reach out to Aesah, please. Sox, anything you want to shout out before you go?
No, but it looks like Aesah's a known tech stealer now, apparently. Stealing your show, stealing my text. Kind of sus. Yeah, I mean, well, I'm pretty excited for TFT in the future. They said they're growing TFT, like, in terms of the number of employees. I don't know if I'm allowed to leak this, but says some monetization. I don't ever buy anything related to TFT because I think that, I mean, I'm fundamentally against spending money on games, but some of the new shit is pretty woke. So pretty excited they're actually trying to make money off TFT finally.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think the esports scene is going to pop up anytime soon, but if it does, I mean, that'll be super lit. Maybe one day it'll be like really, really big. I'm always excited to say that my son Ryan, he's currently 9 months old. He's going to grow up with TFT being the biggest game, so he's actually very lucky.
Gonna make him do roll downs for his chores.
Yeah, TFT is going to be so widespread that in his elementary school they play TFT.
Sox, are you still working on your game? Is that something you want to talk about at all?
Yeah, I know. I mean, right now I've been taking a break. I haven't really been motivated because my partner took a small break, and then because of that, I had to take care of Ryan all week, and I took a break. For my game, I have one idea that is so cool. Like, it is, like, okay, I'm making an auto battler, but I don't want to spoil it. I think the idea is so good and so cool that, like, if I were to pitch it to Riot, it would be the set A mechanic. Like 100% would be the set A mechanic, and set TFT will pop off. But the thing is that I'm trying to also make my game and like sell it at some point, so I can't pitch it to Riot yet. So maybe set time.
All right.
But like this mechanic, I promise you, if I told you guys about it, you're gonna be like, this is a woke.
All right, well, you can follow Aesah at Aesah TFT and Sox at Mismatched Sock 0, I think it is, on Twitter. Make sure you follow both of them for more updates about what they have going on. Thank you, everyone, seriously, who watched this episode live. This was a great chat, great discussion. Appreciate everyone who came on. I don't really have that much more to shout out. I guess, you know, if you aren't already subscribed on YouTube, would really appreciate that. If you don't follow the channel already, would also mean a lot to me if you did that. We're doing these episodes every other week. The next episode 5, is going to be the last one. I believe that'll be during set 6. I don't remember exactly where that timing is. I think that would be the last one, and then we'll move on to set 7. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, shout out to Blind, who helps me run the show. Shout out to Psyched, who's watching this during graduation right now. He's literally in his ceremony watching this. And thank you to everybody who's watching. So seriously, shout outs to all of you who support the show and give us a reason to come on out here. So with that, good night to everybody. Be good, and we'll catch you next time.